Well, today I'm in the seaside resort of Filey on the Yorkshire coast. Well, the old churchyard cemetery in Filey is at St Oswald's. As we got this rather steep path, St Oswald's comes into view, and you can see a multitude of gravestones and tombs around it. On my right are two very large table tombs. The one on the right, I can see the inscription is George Taylor, 1838, aged 36 years. The inscription on the second one is very worn. On the end I can see that they were aged 36. And round on this side the inscription has gone completely. As I reach the main door, I can see that the graveyard stretches quite some way into the distance. The church says it's open, so we'll have a look inside. Well, there were people worshipping in the church, so I wasn't able to give any sort of commentary. I did learn that the church is partly 800 years old, although it's had a lot of modifications, particularly in the Victorian era. As we walk further into the cemetery, away from the church, you'll see that the stones are all facing away from the church. So we'll turn around in a minute and have a look at some of the inscriptions. And as we continue up the central path, you can see many more stones, but we can see the end of the churchyard now. Well, at the far end of the cemetery, you can just glimpse the church tower of St Oswald's in the distance there between the trees. Now we can see the inscriptions on the stones now. As I mentioned before, they're facing away from the church uniformly. Just one taken at random as I walk down the side here. Thomas William Breckens, 1938. There's a cross behind in memory of Elsie May, the wife of Tom Smith, 1936. Go across to the right, George Kappelman, 1938, age 49. Now we're right at the end of the churchyard and they're dating in the 30s, so it would suggest that's around the time when the churchyard became full. One here as we pass, Andy, spelt with an IE, Andy Kane, 1941, age 74. The other side of this central path, husband and father, Richard F. Scotter, 1934, age 64. Pick out one or two of the outstanding ones. Over here I'm noticing an angel clutching the cross. Quite a nice bit of stonework to make this. I'm to watch my feet very carefully. There's a lot of curbstones amongst the grass here. Be easy to trip. So that's a nice bit of stonework. Sadly, the stone needs cleaning at the bottom to get any sort of inscription, but very nicely done. And then immediately behind that, I see a war grave. Let's have a look at this one. This is the Second World War. Sapper T.A. Morley, the Royal Engineers, 1943, age 31. The family have added at the bottom, "Some days we will understand." A sad one here. It's got the image of a fishing boat. My darling husband, Tony, he was drowned at Saltburn in 1973, aged 33. Now, if you ever see a photograph of St Oswald's churchyard, it almost invariably includes this huge memorial. Pretty poor state of repair. The top there has lost quite a lot of its stonework, but it must have been magnificent in its day. If we go inside, we can see on the right we've got Walter Rudstone, and then Rudstone, I can't get that second name, coming round. Percival, born 1852 and died in Australia 1910. It seems to be about the Rudstone family. Well, I'll work my way down the right hand side here. The ground is very uneven. Nicely kept stone for William Wells, late of Botterell Inn, possibly. Yes, Inn. 1853, 1889. Behind that we have William M. Rowe. And then alongside that, falling forward quite badly, is Charles Bulmer, 1997, of Filey. Now this one over here, Robert Skerry, died at Harrogate. This is a nice clean stone. Arthur Neville Cooper, 35, Canon of York. Jane Kappelman, 1891. What attracted my eye on this was the engraving. An anchor with a chain and being grasped firmly by a right hand. Nautical references: John Richard Hanson, husband of Mary, with the Heavenly Pilot. He crossed the bar, 1968. And behind it is John Henry with a sailing ship, fully rigged, two-masted. If I come across to the right, we've got Harrison, husband of Anne Robinson, and we've got a rowing boat with some very stormy looking clouds above. This one depicts an angel underneath the branches of a tree, and behind that a variation similar but just slightly different. Again we have the angel and the tree. This is one of the memorials where they like to list and remember all members of the family. It is a large plot, but I would be surprised if they were all buried here. So we got Jane Grimlisk, her husband George, then we got John Jenkinson, Robert Jenkinson, George Jenkinson, William Camish, all drowned in the research disaster 1925. So I'm guessing they're not buried here. James Jenkinson, lost at sea in 1911, and Fanny, the widow of John Robert Jenkinson, she suffered much but murmured not. So there's quite a story there behind the research disaster, 1925. More ships, sailing ships. We certainly know we're on the coast here at Filey. This is Thomas Williamson. He died in 1918. Nearby, another ship, John Colling. Everywhere I look, the sea is commemorated. This looks rather like a lifeboat. But if I move across behind, another ship for Thomas Chapman Jenkinson. Another Jenkinson with a ship. If I move off behind, a boat, Thomas Williamson Baxter. And everywhere I look in this section of the graveyard, there are people commemorated because of their life by the sea. Over in this corner is a group of war graves, and they're not just of British servicemen. You can see that by the different shape of the tops. This one here is 1940. This is Bennett of the King's Own Royal Regiment, and then we move across to the Polish forces. And one behind. So many of the Polish forces gave their lives in this country fighting that war. 1944. If I go across here, got a British R.G. MacDonald, an observer in the Royal Air Force. Wireless operator, Royal Canadian Air Force. And Mr. Sparrow, B.H. Sparrow, air gunner in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And here's a large stone pillar, and I can make out the inscription. This statue is erected to commemorate the shipwreck which took place on Filey Brig, 1871, of the Italian bark. I'm not really making out the rest there, but here we are commemorating one of the very many shipwrecks which happened on this coast. Well, I'm going to leave the churchyard of St Oswald's now. I'm going to pop across town and just see the new cemetery and just have a quick look at the memorials there. Across the other side of the town of Filey is the modern cemetery. This is the lawns. Beautifully kept. The grass is so neat. Everything's so well looked after. And just across the way is a second section. This is the one they're currently using. A lot of spaces remaining. Some of the stones have illustrations on them. Peter Proctor seems to have an image of the coast around here. David Edward Morton, a fisherman. Next to him is Robert Camish Marr, and a picture of a wartime bomber in camouflage. Presumably he had something to do with that during the Second War. Well, that's my visit to Filey. Wonderful spot. Very popular today with the sun shining. But if you've got time up in Yorkshire, you should certainly seek out Filey. Hope you enjoyed the video. Till the next time.